And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Flying weather for Sunday morning, not too bad over much of interior Alaska, eastern Arctic coast here all the way down in across the central southern Bering Sea Aleutians, all VFR. A narrow band of marginal VFR here along the western central Arctic coast, on down through the Bering Strait to St. Lawrence Island, as far south as St. Matthew Island, and then off to the southwest. And a little bit of IFR here up in the Susitna Valley to about Denali Park along the North Gulf Coast. Another band right along the central Alaska range up into the Aleutian Mountains there. And some marginal VFR spreading up in toward Kodiak Island. While the Panhandle kind of breaks out a little bit with some VFR. Then in the afternoon, just VFR here for the southeast coast, IFR for the North Gulf Coast. But conditions deteriorating. You can see IFR here across Bristol Bay coming right up along the western Alaska range. Marginal VFR pushing up across the Kenai Peninsula into at least Prince William Sound and the Matanuska Valley there into Turnagain Arm, Knik Arm, those areas. And still marginal VFR a little farther east now along the Arctic coast there. And some IFR right along Point Hope, Cape Lisburn to the Bering Strait down towards St. Lawrence Island. Otherwise, the Bering Sea, Aleutians looking really good. And that holds into Monday morning. Still some IFR over the northern Bering Sea, St. Lawrence Island there, up to about Tin City, Teller area, as well as the western Arctic coast. Marginal VFR for the remainder of the coastline up that way. But the North Slope down into the central interior, Yukon River, VFR into Copper River Basin as well. And southern Panhandle VFR, lower conditions to the north with IFR for the North Gulf Coast into Prince William Sound, southern Kenai Peninsula area right up into the Matanuska Valley. IFR also along the central western Alaska range down in toward Bristol Bay and at least a portion of the Kuskokwim Valley. And moving ahead to Monday afternoon, still VFR for the Aleutians and southern Bering Sea here, central Bering Sea as well. IFR. Narrow band still persistent here up across St. Lawrence Island and just clipping the far western Arctic coast, mostly actually off the coastline there with marginal VFR for the remainder of the coastline. But a big change here over the interior with IFR now up into the Yukon Flats, back along the Yukon River into the Kuskokwim Valley, eastward here, right into western Cook Inlet and up along northern Susitna Valley there on the along and south of the Alaska Range. And the Copper River Basin at this point looks to be mostly IFR down into the eastern North Gulf Coast, Lincoln Isle Glacier Bay. But conditions, marginal VFR improving to VFR over the southern southeast coast with Cook Inlet holding VFR down to Kodiak Island, VFR up into at least the central southern Susitna Valley. And for Anatuvik and Adigan, Brooks Range looking good tomorrow, both passes there, VFR. And for Lake Clark and Merrill, starting out VFR, but watch conditions deteriorating rapidly, especially in the afternoon hours, probably going to VFR on the eastern approaches of both passes. Rainy, same forecast. Windy, though, stays VFR. Isabel, VFR. And Mentasta holding VFR. Tanita, VFR becoming marginal VFR, possibly IFR late in the day on the eastern entrance. And Portage, marginal VFR to IFR, definitely through most of the afternoon, IFR conditions there. And Chilcoot and White, VFR. Freezing levels at the surface tomorrow morning, right along the central Aleutians, but still south of the Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island, and down along the right across Prince of Wales Island here with 2,000 feet, northern Dixon entrance. And for icing, a lot of moisture coming up in south-southwest flow here, and considerable moderate rime icing will be up along covering the Gulf of Alaska, up along the North Gulf Coast into Cook Inlet and down along at least the eastern side of Kodiak Island, but no icing of any significance anywhere else around the state or out to the west. And for the jet stream, 33,000 feet, showing broad area of southwest winds coming northeastward here and then taking a turn to the east up to 85 knots over the northern Panhandle, 95 knots over the southeast interior. Bering Sea, northerly winds here all the way down out of the Arctic to along and south of the Aleutians. Same pattern at 9,000 feet, 40 knot north-northeast winds here, central and eastern Bering Sea down to the Aleutians, 45 knots around this low center pulling up across the Alaska Peninsula out of the north-northwest on the southwest side, north side, anywhere from 45 to 60 knots here coming right up into south-central Alaska. And for the southeast coast, lighter winds there, taking a look at 3,000 feet. Again, this low at this elevation down to just west of southwest Kodiak Island there. 60-knot winds blowing into the Gulf of Alaska, coming around to the east on the north side of that center, up to 70 knots right across northeast Bristol Bay, northeast 55 knots for the Kuskokwim Delta, and then northerlies 40 knots there from the Bering Strait down across the Pribilofs and the Alaska Peninsula. Turbulence. Look for considerable moderate turbulence for tomorrow. Prince William Sound, Kenai Peninsula down to Kodiak Island, much of the southwest part of the state here, especially the Kuskokwim Delta southward to the Alaska Peninsula and eastern Aleutian areas.